Welcome to the Couple to Couple League PeakDay podcast, where we discuss natural family planning and fertility for a lifetime with our friends. Today's guests are Colleen and Mark Prespritch. Mark and Colleen have been married for 11 years and have been a CCL teaching couple since 2013. They live in Michigan with their 5 children. Mark is a practicing urologist, and Colleen homeschools the children and is a Catholic children's book writer. Colleen has a website called Elevator to Heaven, at which she promotes sharing your faith with your children. Thank you, Mark and Colleen, for being on the PeakDay podcast with us.
It's our pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We love hearing from our teaching couples, and I'm looking forward to this podcast today. So let's just start at the beginning. How did you two meet?
It was a long, 2011 is when we first met, I think. We were both volunteering at Arts, Beats, and Eats up in Royal Oak. I was actually interested in a friend of Colleen's who happened to be volunteering in a certain time slot, and I knew she would be there. And Colleen just happened to know the same friend and volunteer in the same time slot.
Oh.
And after that, we crossed paths for about a year. We're in similar circles. And after, about a year, we got to know each other a little bit better and started dating. And we're married pretty quickly after that.
So, did you learn about natural family planning during your marriage prep? What was that? What did that beginning look like for you guys?
So we took a class through CCL as part of our, engagement process. Mark was so excited about it. Like, he was the guy, like, in the front row. We took it with 9 other couples, and he's like, I know the answer. Always wanted to talk about it. Always was just like fascinated by the process. I mean, it's the medical guy in him.
I was a pre-medical student, so you threw up charts, graphs, and you're talking about biology. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Love that stuff. So.
Yeah. So we were pretty, when we took the class, we were already on board, right? Like, we knew that this was the church teaching. We were on board with it, but we just didn't know a lot. But really, I think it was through taking the class that we understood how life-changing NFP was going to be for us. I remember after class number 2, I think it was, we were at lunch with some friends of ours, and they've been married for about 10 years. And they're very, very dear friends. And we had just come from NFP class. And so Mark is super jazzed up, and he's like, guess what we learned about? Let's talk about cervical mucus. And he is talking about all, the things that he's learning and how we're already charting. And my friend, I watched her listen, and then she looked at her husband and she said, do you even know when I get my period? And he looked at her and he was like, well, no, why would I know that? And I watched her face fall. And that was the moment for me where I was like, wow, okay, we are not even married yet. And we're having a different level of intimacy and a different level of trust and of open communication.
Wow.
Than these friends of ours who have been married for so long.
Right.
I think the line is, if you can talk about cervical mucus, you can talk about anything.
Yeah.
Right. I think it really allowed us a level of, like Colleen said, a level of intimacy, communication very early on in our marriage. Obviously, the question of whether, not to have children, how many children is so integral to the marriage, and having that question, I think, really thoroughly discerned and thought about and talked about, from that very early on time point. Colleen and I were on, the same page,
Colleen, did you discover any irregularities when you started tracking your cycle, or had you been tracking it before?
We actually did. So when we first got married, we knew, we were, open to having children right away. We were excited about that process. We had been charting, and it wasn't happening. I wasn't getting pregnant, over and over, and that's a really, really heartbreaking experience. Thankfully, my OB was a Catholic OB, very, very familiar, with NFP and with charting. And so after about 6 months, we brought our chart to him. And I was like, what's going on? And he looked at the chart and he's like, well, your luteal phase is too short, and I'm betting it's because you're underweight. So here are the diet changes I need you to make, and you need to gain about 15 to 20 pounds. Wow. And I bet things will, even out. And it did. And that was a very, very simple tweak that we had to make. But without the chart, without having a physician who could read a chart, we would have never. It would have taken a lot longer, right?
Go through a lot more testing, some of it invasive, some of it, Kenny was a Catholic, so
right.
We were in fantastic hands, and I think way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
As a result, and our daughter Gianna was born not too long
after that. Yeah. So that's one of our big pitches with couples is that, like, no matter what your purposes are with charting, the data helps. And if you get stuck in that position of infertility, sometimes you can kind of skip ahead in the process.
Were you using the paper charts? Are you using an app now? What's your what's your practice?
We were at the tail end of the paper chart era.
Yeah.
The app was not quite available when we started.
There was a CD. It was a CD-ROM.
Oh yeah,
right.
That's how old we are. So we were paper charters for the first few years.
Yeah.
The Cycle Pro GoPro app came along, and
right.
Yep. So we are app users now.
Okay.
We started as paper charters.
There's a certain nostalgia there for us. So whenever I see a paper chart, I'm like,
save them. It is something to save.
You get to draw on it and do your own notations. So it's actually, I think you can engage with it maybe even a little better than the app. So I would have learned quite the same way if I had just been an app user from the beginning.
Yeah, it is different. It is different. And then you both have the app on your phones?
Actually, he does.
Okay.
The way that we do our kind of division of labor, I guess, for NFP is that obviously I'm the one who has to, make all the observations and pay attention. But he is the one who uploads all of them.
Records and analyzes.
And then we talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So we each have our own thing, and I think that keeps us both engaged in the process. And, obviously, I have to be aware to be able to record the data and make the analysis. So I do the charting and the analysis.
Yep.
And then
and the analysis. Oh, okay.
And then the communication and the discernment afterwards is what we do together.
Sure. Yeah. So every month we'll sit down together and kind of chat through, where are we for the month? And for us, that looks like, we touch base across a whole bunch of areas of life. We look at where are we financially, like how are we handling the financial obligations of the children that we already have? What's going on in our lives? He has been in residency and medical school. Look at, where are our other kids?
Yep. Are we giving them what they need? Are we loving them? Do we have enough bandwidth to love them well at where they're at?
Right.
And we have, some of our kids have pretty intense ADHD, so they need a lot. Our youngest has an unidentified genetic condition, so she's got, extra therapies and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then we talk about, where is our marriage? How are we connecting?
Yeah.
Are we in a good spot? And we look at individually, like how is my health? I have fibromyalgia, so we look at like how can I physically handle more. We look at Mark's, has a history of depression, so we look at that, like how is his mental health.
Yeah.
Um, and then we kind of
all of that comes out to the answer. We've always, had this disposition to be generous, and as long as it made sense and everything was good, well then obviously we can welcome more children at that time.
And then what do we need to tweak or twist, right? So like if we look at the budget and we're like, oh, okay, we have to make some adjustments, or how can we work to get our kids what they need? And like what changes do we need to make, right? And so I think the other huge benefit for us from using NFP is if you're having those kinds of conversations every month where you're looking at all of those phases of your life, there's really never time for something to go totally off the rails, right?
Right.
So you can like make course corrections a lot more easily if you're having those discussions all the time.
It really has led to a wonderful way of communicating between us.
Yeah.
Just drill down right to the heart of each of these matters and say, where are we really? How are we doing really? So it's been a wonderful blessing to us, and we've gotten 5 wonderful children out of it as well.
Yeah.
All of it, I think, very much made it easier to conceive each one of them because we knew exactly what we needed to come together.
All of our kids do know that they've been planned for and they've been wanted, and they love babies. Like our kids love siblings. So really, anytime if we're discussing anything, they're like, okay, but when's the next baby? So
You know what's going on.
We really need another brother, Dad, because there's 3 girls and only 2 boys. So
yeah, so they're and we're very, very blessed. Mark comes from a big family.
I have 6 siblings.
So there are 16 kids in the family at this point. So they have tons of cousins, and they're very used to, between all the siblings, like a new baby showing up in the family every 6 months or so.
Oh, yeah.
So they do kind of poke us and prod us and are like, but Mom, like it's our turn.
So let's get back to your teaching couple experience. What was your inspiration to become a teaching couple?
For us, I think it was the fact that it had made such a big difference for us so early on. I think we wanted to share that experience with other people and just make it possible for other folks to be blessed in the same way that we were.
Yeah. And the other, so there at the time, kind of the real thrust of like, we had talked about it as something we were, thinking of. It's a great opportunity to get to minister together, right? Like it's something that we can do as a couple, as opposed to a lot of other areas of ministry. It's either, his giftedness or my giftedness. And, but the real, like the thing that created okay, this is maybe time for us to do that, is after we had our first, postpartum charting is really, really confusing, and it's really complicated. And we had moved to a different part of the state by this point, and there weren't teaching couples near us. There wasn't anybody that we could, email or call and say, hey, could you teach us, the transitions class? And so we kind of muddled our way through it online, but we were both of us like, okay, this is something that's lacking. There needs to be somebody in our area that can help couples through this. And I would say that honestly, most of the classes we've taught have ended up being that class. That transitions postpartum, how do you do it class.
So the couples who are coming to your classes, have you seen like a shift in their interest over the years that you have been teaching? Are they, coming just to kind of check off the box for the, marriage prep, or are you seeing more couples that are interested in the classes for health reasons?
I would say that most, early on, and especially when we were doing more, kind of pre-COVID, at our parish, a lot of those couples were coming with like, we have to check the box. We have to, like have said we sat through
Right.
this.
Please sign our form.
But I think especially when we look at who's coming and reaching out to us about, those postpartum courses, those are couples who really want it, or really, and sometimes what we get are couples who maybe never took the first course because they thought, we're open to children, we're fine with getting pregnant, we don't need NFP. And then after that first child comes, you realize, okay, well, maybe I'm not ready for another one 6 weeks later. So now there's like okay, we might need to learn this. So those couples are usually coming out of a desire to like really learn and understand in a new way.
So what would you like to say to a newly engaged couple, especially about learning natural family planning and how it impacts the marriage in so many ways?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say learn it. I think it's probably one of the most valuable things we took away from our pre-marriage prep was the NFP, and in a lot of surprising ways. I think there's so much, I don't know, I would say misinformation, but uncertainty around what NFP is. But it really changed our marriage in a hugely positive way, even outside the ability to be able to plan our family. It just really jump-started, again, our communication, our intimacy, and really, I think, allowed the Lord to really begin working in our marriage.
So after students have, begun to take a class, maybe after their first or second class, have you seen kind of that aha moment where their view of natural family planning kind of changes a little bit? Have you seen that shift happen in your students?
We definitely have. I love one of the first couples that we taught came in. They were already married, and at first, they were saying like, we're just not sure that we're in a position to have children, but we want to follow what the church is saying. So help us. And over the course of 3, sessions, and because we often teach smaller classes, so we tend to do them right in our house. It's a little bit more of an intimate environment. You can have more conversations, less academic. But I remember at the, so we had been talking a lot about what discernment looks like and what children, like what life with kids looks like. And so they came to the third and final class and they were like, okay, guys, I hope it's okay, but after last class, we kind of realized we're ready and guess like we're pregnant. And we were so like just and like we were the first people they told.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was like going through the class had helped them to feel confident enough that they were ready. Because I think sometimes, especially in society today, where you don't like feel, you're like, wow, the deck is stacked against us, or I don't know if I can do this. But when you actually when you're actually really thinking and praying and going through these things, you often get a level of confidence. So I think that's like one of my very favorite moments.
I bet.
We've seen an uptick in interest. We've seen people, like the women will come over and ask me some questions after, or, when we share, especially how powerful it is for intimacy and how important it is. And so for couples who maybe aren't all the way in it yet, or aren't all the way like on board with church teaching, we've found that sharing, the emotional benefits, the intimacy benefits, the health benefits, those kinds of things are a great gateway.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe having those conversations after you've made that connection,
So, Mark, when other men hear that you are a natural family planning teacher, what kind of conversations do you have?
Well, it's kind of funny because not a lot of men know what NFP is. So if they're Catholic and they know what NFP is, I mean, obviously the conversation would be like, "Oh, that's so cool! Like, how long have you been doing it? What got you into that? Why would you ever want to do that?" But for other guys who aren't Catholic and don't know much about fertility awareness, particularly in the medical field, there's actually kind of I won't say a stigma, but a lot of medical professionals will hear natural family planning, and they'll think rhythm method. A lot of the things that came out, before the 60s, before a lot of the science around fertility was actually known. And a lot of our guidelines or our white papers will talk about family planning methods as being pretty not effective. So it's actually an opportunity for me to talk to them about how effective NFP is, or can be, if you use a modern method. And it's just not known in the medical community at all how effective it is without any pills, without any surgery, without any invasive intervention. If you just tell couples how to be aware of their fertility, give them a very powerful tool to plan their family the way they want, without subjecting men and women to, again, invasive techniques. So I think it's really a beautiful thing, and really underutilized and underrecognized in the medical community. So I've had some really wonderful conversations with some folks, and coming away from it, like, wow, I really didn't know that.
Right.
Obviously, like Colleen was talking about, like I think people need this information. There's not a lot of teaching couples out there, so to be able to be that person and to fill that need has been really a wonderful experience for us.
Yeah, and we've also loved the opportunity to build relationships and to kind of journey alongside couples in such an important and vulnerable time. Because, the couples that we're seeing while they're engaged, that's a stressful time period, right? Like you've got so many things going on and so many things that you're trying to do, and you're holding all of these, in your head, all the data about how are we planning this wedding and all the things that need to be done. And to be able to offer an opportunity for them to step back and say, hey, let's recenter ourselves here. And to kind of invite them into, for us, our home. This is something we can offer to the Lord, to the church, together as a unit.
It's a great blessing for couple to couple to have these volunteer teaching couples. You're not getting paid, you're doing it for love of what you're doing. So that's pretty amazing. What was the inspiration for Elevator to Heaven?
The inspiration for that kind of came from when Mark was just starting medical school. We were already married. We had a young daughter. We were caring for my grandmother who lived with us. And I was looking for ways to kind of connect with other people who maybe we're doing this whole medical school thing while married, or we're, trying to raise kids in that environment. And I wasn't finding a lot of support or community. And so it began kind of just me, this was back when blogging was much more of a thing, right? And it became just a space for me to share what day-to-day life looked like for us, so that maybe other people down the road could find, encouragement in it. And it kind of started growing more from there. As our daughter got older and our other kids joined, I started, writing more about how I was using my Montessori background or my missionary background and incorporating those things into our daily life. So things like how are you talking about your kids with prayer? Or what are some ways that we're bringing faith into day to day? Or, how to give this lesson that's a Montessori lesson. And then, it's just kind of kept growing as, the books have come out. And it's a space for me to offer what I know to others, and to kind of pull in resources that have been helpful to me to make the lives of other moms and dads a little bit easier.
So, Mark, how do you support Colleen's work with Elevator to Heaven?
I think one really important thing is Colleen's been a stay-at-home mom since we started medical school, which has been very beautiful and very, I think, wonderful for her and for our children. But the ministry that she's had with Elevator to Heaven, and being able to write the books, I think is also a really amazing piece of her life. And I think a lot of stay-at-home moms might not feel empowered or might not feel they have the time or the energy, and which is true. Stay-at-home moms have a lot on their plates in general. So I think my encouragement to the dads out there is just that, moms have a lot to give. And I've found a lot of fruit for myself in just making a point to give Colleen any time that she needs or any resources or any ask that she has, for this ministry that she's embarked on, to be very supportive of that from the beginning. And I think it's just been a wonderful thing for her and for me to see her just blossom into a writer, into this wonderful, blog writer, to be able to be a speaker, all these things that have kind of blossomed out of that. But she needed the space and the time and the resources, all of which, is totally reasonable. So I would just encourage any dads out there listening that, if their wife has an idea like, hey, I need time to do this, or I would like to maybe start writing or blogging or start this
painting or creating or learning.
All incredibly valuable, and I would just encourage dads out there just to give their wives the time to do that, because they'll blossom.
It would not be possible, right? And but I think more than just the fact that he does give space and time for me to work, but part of it is because he has the underlying belief and understanding that my gifts and talents and my work is that we are equals in that, right? And that what I am trying to accomplish or what I'm feeling called to from the Lord is not lesser than his job,
right, because
it brings in less money, right? So he is always very respectful of the fact that that what I do is valuable.
Absolutely.
And that makes a difference, because then it's not so much like, oh, I'm gifting you this opportunity, honey. It's acknowledging that that's how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah. We're both supposed to have time and space to develop our talents and to serve where God's calling us.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Colleen and Mark, for being on the PeakDay podcast and sharing all of your beautiful thoughts and gifts with us. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure. Thanks
for having us.
God bless you.
Oh, absolutely.